Welcome back to the new SEC podcast. I'm Hunter Zeisman here with Randall Ledet Jr. We are talking portal transfers in the SEC, going from one SEC school to another when we did our list on the top 10 that went from out of conference into the SEC. But now we got ones that maybe there's a little bit of bad blood here. You're going from, some of these are going to rival schools, or they're, transferring to opponents that they have on the schedule next year. When you look at some of these guys like Parker Livingston, for example, who's going from Texas to Oklahoma, that's a tough switch up to go to a rival school. And we got some good ones on this list to talk about.
Yeah, we definitely got some good ones. And, the transfer portal, it's obviously really important now when it comes to recruiting. And, these in-conference transfers are really impactful, right? Hunter and I were talking about this morning, one of the most impactful ones from this past season, Mario Craver going from Mississippi State to Texas A&M. These are really important when it comes to getting your team where you want them to be, whether that's a bowl game, making the playoffs, helping improve quarterback play. That tremendously helped Marcel Reed's abilities to pass down the field. And we saw it first second game against Notre Dame. So a lot of great players that we are going to highlight and put a spotlight on here in this top 12. And it was really hard to make this list because the SEC is full of such great talent and a lot of guys who said, you know what, I'm changing my where I'm playing, but I'm keeping it in the Southeast.
Starting at number 12, we got wide receiver here, Eugene Wilson, going from Florida to LSU. That's a huge change. I mean, I'd say statistically, looking at his play at Florida, it's not really all encompassing of the player that he is, kind of been plagued by injuries. But now coming to LSU, where they have good quarterback coming in, really revamping that offense around Lane Kiffin, this is a really good addition to the LSU team.
Yeah, and I respect this move, right? Eugene Wilson's been very loyal at Florida. He's played there for 3 seasons. He's played with a ton of different quarterbacks, stuck it out with Billy Napier. His best season statistically was in 2023, 538 yards, 8.8 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns. This past year, 239 yards, 3 touchdowns, 27 receptions. I like what he's going to be able to bring to the table with Sam Levitt and a lot of the other receivers they brought in at LSU. What excites you most about this move for Eugene going from Florida to LSU?
I think joining a system where maybe the play calling is more complementary to his style of play. I think at Florida, they were using him maybe too much behind the line of scrimmage. We saw a game he had this year with negative yardage and a touchdown. Finished the season in the season opener with negative 1 yard and a touchdown. Right after Billy Napier was fired at Florida, he went for 121 yards against Georgia. So I think that if you can get this guy schemed up right, we know that Lane's worked well with, good wide receivers that have put out really productive college seasons, looking at Jonathan Mingo, Trey Harris, during his time in Alabama, he's worked with, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
You can start developing receivers who are going to have explosive seasons if the injuries don't catch back up to him. The hip injury he had surgery on, ankle from this past year, he could really be something special with Sam Levitt.
Yeah. This shows you how special this list is. Eugene Wilson coming in at number 12. Now, who do we have at number 11, Hunt?
Number 11, we have Amarion Harris going from Arkansas to Oklahoma, right tackle out of Arkansas. Only 3 sacks given up all year, played every game for Arkansas. Good addition to Oklahoma.
Great addition to Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a ton of, some of the big guys up front into the portal. That's how it goes right now in the transfer portal. But this guy coming in from Arkansas brings in 24 starts over the past 2 seasons, played a key role in guys like Taylor Green being able to run the football really effectively, guys like Mike Washington being able to run the ball effectively at Arkansas. Now bringing that over to Oklahoma. A very strong rushing offense from the quarterback position, but obviously room to improve from the running back position. I like what this guy brings, seeing what Arkansas was able to do rushing wise, top 3 in the conference, and being able to hopefully bring that blocking piece to the Oklahoma Sooners team.
Yeah, Derek Simmons is a tough guy to replace for Oklahoma. And you mentioned the running ability that he brings to the table. Taylor Green running to the right was his favorite way to go, and you could see it statistically when he's running to the left or right of Amarion Harris, he was much more effective. John Mateer going to run, and they're bringing back a lot of pieces of their offense, whether it's the running back and receivers, replacing that gap at right tackle. A good move towards next year when you're looking to make some improvements offensively. So Amarion Harris, number 11.
Number 10, Ricky Gibson III, gone from Tennessee to Texas A&M, defensive back. Big move here. A&M only makes money moves. And Hunter, what excites you about this move?
I think, going into last season, he was a guy that we talked a lot about. We talked about the Tennessee defensive back room and how it was going to be a crucial part. Statistically, looking at the season, Tennessee got carved up, but it was because of injuries. He got hurt in the season opener against Syracuse this past season. Now looking to come into next season healthy, you're bringing guys back to Texas A&M too. You got, Marcus Ratcliffe, Des Ricks, Damian Sanford at linebacker. If they can match up some good DB play, this can really elevate Texas A&M's team. I think that what Tennessee could have benefited from this guy would have made them much more of a contender had he been able to play this past season.
Yeah, this guy's not only good at, pass deflections, 3 pass deflections in 2024. He's a good tackler, which you don't see as often when it comes to the DB position. 32 total tackles in 2024. Like you mentioned, unfortunate injury in 2025, but this A&M team is starting to shape up a little bit how I've seen that Ohio State roster a couple years back. Guys are coming back. They realize the value of NIL and getting their game up to get to that top 3 round grade. And then other guys are coming into the program to fill in gaps, like you mentioned, to play alongside these guys. And so Ricky Gibson III coming in at number 10 is a great addition when it comes to what they need to do in the secondary at Texas A&M.
Absolutely. And staying with a Tennessee transfer, we'll move to number 9, Jordan Ross, off of the edge. This is crucial because you look at some of the departures from LSU, bringing in Jordan Ross off of the edge, you're replacing guys like Pyber and Peyton Butler. And the pass rush maybe wasn't as explosive as it could have been. And you bring in the physicality of Jordan Ross. And he's not the only pass rush addition we're going to have on this list going to LSU. But this is one more piece as LSU kind of has taken from the portal with Lane Kiffin and developed a really solid team for Blake Baker on the defensive side.
Not too much more to say there. LSU last year had a great secondary. The pass rush, as you mentioned, could have used a little bit more to it. You bring guys back like Weeks as well in the linebacker core to pair with Jordan Ross at the edge position. It's a great addition. There's not really much more I could say there.
Yeah, big guy on potential. I think that maybe statistically you don't see it on paper. Potential based on size, explosiveness, he can really do something solid for this team. Number 9, Jordan Ross.
Number 8, Amaris Williams coming in from Auburn, going to Georgia. Georgia, a school not traditionally known for making a ton of moves in the portal, but I think another school, when they do make moves, they typically pan out. So, he hails from Hunter's backyard, Fayetteville, North Carolina. 9 solo tackles last season at Auburn, 2 sacks. With the coaching change at Auburn, losing DJ Durkin as a defensive coordinator, of course, a whole new regime there with Golish. This move makes sense with what Georgia's defense has been able to do historically, and then where they've struggled this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a former 5-star who, statistically hasn't really been able to crack the code at Auburn of the pass rush, but with the right game plan and development and looking at what Georgia's been able to do at putting guys into the league, he fits this team. And you look at what Georgia does defensively and even offensively, it's being physical, it's out-dogging someone, no pun intended. And that's what Amaris Williams brings to this team. The pass rush wasn't there last year, but you bring guys in like this who can do that. And then he's also really efficient in the run stop, setting that edge. He kind of plays into that Georgia was really good at this past season. So I think this is a huge pickup. Tough, you're going to a rival school not too far away. So this is one of the ones we're talking about where it's an inter SEC transfer that there's a little bit of bad blood, with the transfers here. So it's a good one though for Georgia to get.
Definitely a good one. And I think he was a sophomore last season, so he should have at least another 2 more years as well. So a lot of longevity, a young Georgia defense, a young Georgia roster. I love this pickup for them. I think he's going to explode next season. Number 7, we got Austin Simmons, Ole Miss to Missouri. The Ole Miss transfers are always interesting to see where they're going to go, given the kind of the coaching regime change there. So, Hunter, thoughts on this pick for us?
I think this was inevitable. You saw this one coming kind of a mile away, depending on how the season shook out, and it's no shade to Austin Simmons on what happens. I mean, after Jackson Dart's departure at Ole Miss, it was expected that it would be Austin Simmons' team, and that's what happened coming into the year. And then after an injury, it kind of paved the way for one of college football's most exciting stories in Trinidad Chambliss. So, with or without his return to Ole Miss, I think the writing was on the wall for Austin Simmons to leave. Go to a school like Missouri, I think it's a great fit. They're bringing back an excellent running back room. You're adding some pieces from the portal. Caden Lee, for example, former teammate of Austin Simmons at Ole Miss, joining him. I think this is a great pickup where he can get his start and go into the season, as the leading quarterback.
Yeah, when we made this list in terms of, top 12 in conference transfers, I really looked at, impact and fit. And, it'll be a quarterback competition, but I think most people expect for Simmons to be the starter. This guy's got 2 or 3 more seasons left to play. He was a sophomore last year, redshirt sophomore. Last season, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a little bit questionable. He had an interception against Citadel, 2 interceptions against Georgia State in the first game. But I think this was a guy that if he played throughout the whole season, he was going to warm up to be the player he was meant to be. He didn't have that ability to play those 12, 13 games. And I expect him to use his legs more. It's 71 rushing yards and a rushing TD last season. I think he's got a lot in the tank when it comes to running the football. And this could be the next Brady Cook, the next star quarterback at Missouri. So I love this pickup, and I'm glad he stayed in conference.
Yeah, he's got some big games coming up. I'm excited to see, week 2 starting kind of their main schedule with Kansas, and then mid-October they'll play Ole Miss.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just about halfway through here, and at number 6 we got Eric Singleton, wide receiver, going from Auburn to Florida. As many know, he transferred from Georgia Tech to Auburn, now making his 3rd stop at Florida with the new regime. Obviously brand new coach there at Summerall, trying to earn his Gator logo. So what are your thoughts on this transfer?
Yeah, he was initially going to go to the draft, took his name out to go to Florida, I think with some of the changes, with Aaron Philo, former Georgia Tech teammate of his, going to Gainesville, Georgia Tech offensive coordinator joining down in Florida. Things made sense for him. And I think, when he transferred to Auburn, maybe there was higher expectations from him on what the program would be, as a Tiger. I don't think they really got their money's worth out of him, and that's not his fault. I think it fell on what the offense at Auburn was, 99th nationally in passing yards. Now you join Florida, they're doing the right things. They kept Jaden Ball. I think Dallas Wilson was a great piece to keep at Florida, the freshman who had some good games this past season. Those guys are going to impact the roster, but then you have seniority brought by guys like Singleton to come in, who's a really, really solid receiver. Fun fact about him, 6th longest active streak in FBS for consecutive games with a reception, 36 straight games with a catch.
He makes plays. All that tells me is that he makes plays, right? And I think, like you said, this is a great pickup. I love the continuity with Philo. I love the continuity with the Georgia Tech OC. Bring some new, fresh air to the roster. Those 2 seasons he had at Tech, 754 yards, 714 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think we showed this graphic so many times throughout this past season of what Eric Singleton was supposed to do with Cam Coleman. The challenge was the passer. And I don't expect that to be the case here with Florida. We don't necessarily know what Philo can do, but I can't imagine it being worse than the situation that was happening at Auburn. So I love this pickup. I think Eric Singleton could be a Mario Craver type guy with the right passing and the right opportunities.
In keeping with wide receivers, look at number 5, another really impactful wide receiver transfer that hurts the school that they left, and that's Isaiah Horton going from Alabama to Texas A&M. For Alabama fans, this one really hurts to lose because he's a big-time player and brought a different type of weaponry to Alabama, and he brings that same level of weaponry to A&M that they didn't have this past season. When you're looking at the receivers that they had, it was kind of quick, shifty, smaller frame guys. You now have a 1v1 matchup winner. 6'4", can win downfield. That adds one more trick to Marcel Reed's bag for this season.
Yeah, this was a tough departure for Alabama, but a money move for Texas A&M, as I mentioned earlier. 23rd in the country when it came to touchdowns in the season, 8 touchdowns, 511 reception, 511 yards, 12.2 yards per catch. I mean, if he wasn't sharing the load with Jeremy Bernard, he might have had an 800-yard season, honestly. This guy is a dog. He was a dog at Miami. He's a dog at Alabama. This is an incredible pickup. I expect him to have an even better season this year with Marcel Reed going into his 2nd full season starting.
Yeah, his confidence is increasing. His arm continues to increase. Now he can throw some 50-50 balls, push the envelope downfield, which is something that we were looking to see from him this season. You pair that with the speedy play of the existing wide receiver core, A&M could find themselves back with a tougher schedule, could find themselves back into the playoffs this upcoming year.
Yeah, schedule looks very SEC West-ish from back in the day. So yeah, we'll see how they do. At number 4, let's get the big guys some love. Offensive lineman, Carius Kern, LSU to Ole Miss. Lane, what's going on? What happened?
He's done well at getting some backfills on the O-line. I mean, this is a former 5-star, true freshman. Played great for LSU. I know the Tigers would have loved to keep him. The O-line at Ole Miss was already really solid this past season. Now you continue to bolster that and bringing pieces in. I think this is a great – when this one happened, this was a great notifier that Ole Miss wasn't going to roll over through the regime change, through the playoff run. It wasn't a one and done. We're going to continue to go out and get guys to make this team even better. You're bringing back, great running backs that need to run behind a really solid O-line. This is one more piece to that.
Yeah, it's a really, really solid piece. And, they obviously, we talked about the running backs that they have right now. Kawan Lacey, people expecting him to kind of be another top 5 running back this season. I love this pickup. He's a great run blocker in Carius Kern. And like you mentioned, the Pete Golding era is here. He's got some guys, and this is another great pickup. So at number 4, Carius Kern. Number 3, we're sticking in the trenches. Lance Hurd, Tennessee to Kentucky. This is his second SEC transfer move. I think he started off at LSU.
Yeah.
Then went to Tennessee last season. Finished third team All SEC. So, Hunter, thoughts on this move?
Will Stein's building something at Kentucky offensively. I think it's a hodgepodge of different guys that they've pulled in to create an offense and hopefully change the tides at Kentucky of the past few seasons. You brought in Kenny Minchie at quarterback. He's to play behind a really solid O-line. They got another interior lineman, Colton Price, coming in from Baylor, but you got running back CJ Baxter coming in. You got wide receiver Nick Anderson, piecing it all together. And where I think and where you spend your money and where the money's best served is in the trenches, because those are the guys. Without them, it all falls apart. Lance Hurd, I think, is a great pickup for Kentucky. He's a
great pickup. And you talked about Colton Price, right? This list particularly is for NSEC transfers, but Colton Price is a great pickup in the interior offensive line from Baylor. Both these guys are top 60. If you look at lists like On3 and 24/7, I love this move. I think when Will Stein came over from Oregon, I'm imagining that Kentucky basically said, look, like, we know you're coming from a program with a ton of money and resources. And if we want you to make this move, we want to give you the resources you need to build this program to where it could be. We know we're a basketball school. We know we have money. And I think it's reflected in some of the talent they're getting. I mean, even just being a part of the Sam Levitt discussion and potentially getting him shows that there was an investment in football. And this move right here, getting a third team All SEC lineman, a guy with 479 pass block snaps, only gave up 2 sacks all season, speaks volumes. Going from Tennessee, we're talking about Tennessee here. Like, that's a legit program. To bring his talents to Kentucky says a lot about what Kentucky's trying to do here in football.
Yeah, huge for them. Another really big transfer. We have a really big, impactful transfer, and I could say you could even put this as one of the bigger transfers of the season. We have Prince Will Umemealin going from Ole Miss to LSU, a late addition to the portal. Kind of one of those tricky ones there at the end on, following Lane Kiffin. 9 sacks, 20th nationally in that, 13 tackles for loss. I mean, a solid football player comes into a LSU room that needs that pass rush, replacing some players like we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Incredible season. You talked about his contributions in the pass rush. 9 sacks is incredible. I mean, if it wasn't for certain guys in this conference like Cassius Howell and some of the other guys on A&M, he probably was first team All SEC. He was third team All SEC. We got to remember this guy played in Nebraska for 2 seasons, transferred to Ole Miss, probably to follow in his brother's footsteps, played for a guy like Lane Kiffin. He continues to make the move over to LSU. This guy's a stud. I think this is an incredible pickup, and this LSU defense is shaping up to be really incredible. For many, this guy was the number 1 guy in the portal from the defensive perspective. We have him at number 2 for our in-conference transfer move, however. Yeah, and I think contextualizing what this means for LSU is important when you look at their schedule for next year. Barring some quarterback competitions and some unknowns, they have at least 6 highly mobile quarterbacks on their schedule next year. When you have someone who can set the edge, who can get to the quarterback, who's quick enough to chase as well, this is an important thing for their schedule next year and the needs for LSU. So I think not only is he high on this list and the national list because of who he is as a football player, I think it fits the LSU DNA and it fits what they need for next season. So Prince Will U is a huge addition. Massive. And I'm excited to dig more into the 6 mobile quarterbacks as we continue our coverage this season. Number 1, Hunter, you go ahead and introduce this one. Number 1, no surprise here on maybe one of the biggest transfers, whether it's in SEC or just in the nation. We have Cam Coleman going to Texas from Auburn. One more Auburn guy leaving, adds a weapon to the bag for Arch Manning, who, as the season went on, was really impressive. In going into next season, we're expecting that same, output from what he did at the end of the season. Now you have Cam Coleman, great receiver, whose statistics at Auburn don't even really paint the picture of how good of a football player he is. Yeah, this guy is an absolute dog. I mean, I agree with you. The statistics don't really paint that picture. He really started to kind of come out of his shell when they went to Daniels at the quarterback position. A couple of his breakout performances against Vanderbilt, 143 yards, 1 touchdown. I think he was averaging like 8 or 10 yards per catch. And then he had a good performance against Missouri, 108 yards. The problem was they lost both those games. He wants to win. 708 yards last season, 5 touchdowns, 12.6 yards per catch. This guy is a dog. Like, if you do nothing else this offseason, watch his tape and you will understand. Like, he is very, very good.
Yeah, he has a deep ball contested catch rate of 81.8%. And like you said, watch the tape. We can roll the clip after clip of him winning 1v1 matchups downfield. Arch Manning likes to air it out. I think to a detriment at some points this year, but not really because of him, but because he didn't have maybe those downfield 1v1 winners. He had Ryan Wingo, who is great after the catch. He's really good in the screen pass. But now when you have someone who's like a safety distractor who needs that double coverage downfield, because if you have an accurate deep ball, he's going to win it. You got Wingo who can take screens to the house. It's a huge complementary piece to the offense. So now you're playing complementary football with additional weapons and great running backs too. The offense is really rounding out, and I think Arch Manning's progression plays well into that as well.
Yeah, offense is really rounding out, and I mean, I think Texas basically looked at their roster and said, okay, like DeAndre Moore's good, Parker Livingstone's good. They're not in the Jeremiah Smith discussion. They're not in the Malachi Toney discussion. Cam Coleman is the discussion. Like he is the guy, and he's in that creme de la creme wide receiver core, and so they got a guy that can make those plays down the field, like I mentioned, and really upgrade at the wide receiver position tremendously having Cam there. I think it more so comes down to what Manning can do and less of what Coleman is able to do.
Yeah, it opens up the downfield throw, like I said, pushing the envelope downfield. It's a game-breaking player. You look at some guys who they got surefire hands. You can give them the ball. This is a guy who, if you need it, there's nothing wrong with throwing up a 1v1, a 50-50 ball, because he can win some of those. Yeah. And I think that's a huge thing, especially when you're in tight games. They have a tough schedule this year. Playing Ohio State early on in the season, at home in Austin, it's huge to have these kind of guys who can be game breakers, who can have one singular play that can change the force of a game.
Definitely. It's massive. So, I mean, there's so much we could say about him, and, it was a big splash when he entered the portal. This is a great addition to Texas, and I'm excited to see him wear the burnt orange and what he's able to do here this season for them. So, any last thoughts on our top 12? Any other guys? Just when you look, any guys you think like who are most poised for a breakout that we've talked about today or haven't talked about?
Yeah, I think the top 12, we had to make it 12 instead of 10 because you really had some extra guys we had to fit in here. There's a couple good other ones. Wilkin Formby going to A&M, Caden Lee, who we talked about, following Austin Simmons to go to Missouri. I think who has the most potential, for a breakout season, I would say I'd be looking at, Eugene Wilson, should he stay healthy. And I think Austin Simmons, again, to Missouri, with what Ahmad Hardy does at the running position, this could be what Missouri needs. We saw him ball out against Georgia when he had to come in for Jackson Dart. Like you said, he hasn't had a full body of work, so he's the one I'm very excited about here.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two make the most sense, right? Like the receiver position can make such an impact in a game, and the quarterback position, you could argue, makes the biggest impact in the game, right? We don't see a ton of running back in conference transfers in this list, right? A guy that I neglected to bring up at the beginning of our conversation, Kawan Lacey, was an in-conference transfer. So I'm sure there's guys that have transferred from the running back position to other positions that we just haven't included in this top 12 because they haven't played a ton or we're unaware of what they're capable of. But if fresh scenery, right coaching can really make a difference. And the Austin Simmons pick you mentioned excites me because he has the most room to show. Like, we know what Isaiah Horton can do. We know what Eric Singleton can do. We really don't know what Austin Simmons can fully do. But if you're a starting SEC quarterback and you had that job outside of an injury happening, I think you're good. And I think that he can really shine this season. So for our Missouri listeners, you care about what we say, I think that could be a really good one to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, rounds out the top 12 here. We also did, like I mentioned, the top 10 out of SEC coming into the SEC. So be sure to watch that video if you haven't yet. As you finish up here, let us know who maybe
we'll put
left.
A caveat that was recorded in 117 before Jordan Seaton made the move in the portal as well. So when you look at the list, if he's not there, we backdated it.
Yeah, cut us some slack. If there's anyone here that you think maybe we left off that you were excited about for your team or another NSEC transfer, be sure to let us know. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel. We have some off-season stuff coming. As we look at next season, some way too early lists, so be sure to tune into that. As always, I'm Hunter Zeisman, joined here by Randall Ledet Jr. of the new SEC podcast. And until next time.